Good afternoon. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this live session organized by Ellie Publishing. Thank you for joining us. I can see so many of you coming from so different parts from all over the world. So my name is Silvia Petrosillo. I'm the International Marketing Manager in Ellie Publishing. I just wanted to, to get your attention just for a few seconds on, by providing you some technical information before the live session starts with our speaker. So just wanted to remind you that this session will be recorded and it will be uploaded on our YouTube channel, Ellie Multimedia, in the next few, let's say, days, in a week, 2 weeks time, I would say. Then you will all receive the certificate in a PDF format in your email box tomorrow afternoon, let's say about this time, but tomorrow. Then before the session ends, just remember to download from your, so there's a menu bar on your right side and there's a document tool, document box actually, where you can download the handout, the PDF or this presentation, so that you can download it before the session ends for your study, for your archive, for your reference. Then always on your tool, on your menu bar on your right side, there's a questions box. Please write down as many questions as you wish, and during the session and at the end of the session, and our speaker will be pleased to answer to all of them. You will see that you won't be able to see other teachers' questions. This is something, this is a limit in this with this platform, I'm afraid, but we will monitor. I will be monitoring all your questions, so don't worry about that. So I think it's, well, I think now it's time for to pass on, to give the floor to our speaker, Mr. Andy Cowle, with your session, Prepare Students for Life and Language in the 21st Century. Thanks, Andy, for being here today with us.
Thank you, Sylvia. Always good to be here. As many of you know, I work all the time with the training ideas and activities with all the courses with Ellie Publishing, and I'm glad to be here today to talk about working with teenagers, younger and older teenagers. And I haven't set up a poll, but I'm going to ask a question in the chat. So I'm going to ask a question in the chat, and the question is this: really, when you are doing your lessons, preparing your lessons, considering your lessons, how much do you really consider and include 21st century skills and life in the lessons? So put number 1 if it's a lot, put number 2 if it's sometimes, or 3 not very often. I'll put it in the chat. So just look in the chat now if I can find it. Can you see that? How much do you consider life and culture skills of the 21st century in your lessons? A lot, number 1, sometimes, number 2, or not very often, number 3. No judgment, I'm just asking. Oh, that's good. Yeah. We're going to look at, hello, Rob. What are you doing here? Nice to see you. I assume it's the same Rob, I know. Okay, so there we go. It looks like we're all pretty much on the ball. No choice really, because the 21st century just keeps reminding us of just how varied and changing it is. And I just want to pick out some of the things that I think we just have to keep remembering. I talk about it quite a lot now in all courses and all trainings, and I know it's obvious, but it is vital that we keep linking English to the real world and all the skills they're going to need to navigate that world, which includes a multicultural world. And as we know, it's by far and away a non-native speaker use of English that's dominated the communication space. And as teachers of English, we are on the one hand bound by the rules of the education system to teach a certain kind of English, the English that's in the exam, the grammar, the spelling, and all the comprehension tests that lead to a mark for the students. And that still feels a little uncomfortable to me, even in my own country, the way we test and examine foreign language learning, because in the end it becomes something that's that you can score. You know, it's the right piece of grammar, it's the wrong word, it's the correct idiom, it's the wrong tense, and these things are all very markable, aren't they? And it really suits us, or suits the system, to say this is correct and this is not correct. Like maths, it's only right or wrong. But of course, that's not the reality of communication. It's a grey area. It's, if you pardon the expression, it's 50 shades of grey. It's more than 50. It's infinite shades of grey. Language isn't really black and white. And yet, that's what we end up doing. And that's really what we have to do. But I would argue, as I hope you've seen in many sessions and through the materials we can look at today, which come from a new series from Ellie called Ready for Planet English, which I quite like, because it is very much a planet of English usage. And are we really ready for it? What does it mean to be ready for a planet that's communicating still very much in English as the lingua franca? And I think that's really important, because it's very, normal to see things like this, pictures of so-called native speaker English countries, English speaking countries, and everybody feels, certainly parents often feel quite comfortable thinking, well, great, this is an English course, we're going to go to America, aren't we? We're going to go to the UK. And of course, that's not really the case. Certainly, we can all agree, and if I was in a face-to-face session with you, I would be, having the hands up, asking you to shout out, what is culture, what is British, what is American, what is typically your country. But in the case of English, I mean, if I was learning, for example, there's someone there from Estonia. If I was learning Estonian, well, it's only going to be useful for me in Estonia. And by knowing that language, I'm going to be getting to know the people, how they really are. As we know, learning a language really well, it's like moving the fog away, and you start to see things more clearly from the internal cultural perspective, below the surface culture. These pictures here represent surface culture. Tea and scones and statues of liberty, kangaroos in Sydney and Australia. Maybe there are kangaroos in Sydney. And I suppose what we want to do is certainly open our students' eyes to culture. It would be crazy to think that if I learned Estonian, it wouldn't help me open the window to Estonian culture. But it doesn't mean I would be communicating effectively unless other things are at play. And the thing about English is that because it is global and not really just the domain of those in those countries speaking English as a first language, like in Britain and USA and New Zealand and so on, that would be, to teach to that aim to go and visit there would be to miss the point. It's only one possible need for English. And of course, many of you will know, possibly shouting at the computer already, Andy, we know this, but do we really teach to that effect, that if we're going to teach English to be used for the purposes of work and study, for example, or even traveling, they may not really ever go to these countries. They might use their English very, very much in their lives, your students, and never have a desire to go to any country where they speak English like this, because it's not necessarily the goal anymore to sound like a native speaker. What does that mean, in fact? And this isn't the domain of this, the time and energy for this session wouldn't be on English as a lingua franca, but there are fantastic resources and webinars and articles out there along the lines of, if, as they say, 3/5 of the world is speaking English, communicating in English as a foreign or second language, why would we actually teach a perfect British English or American English model? Well, you could teach the model as good pronunciation. You've got to have something, but is that really equipping the students to communicate by listening effectively? In other words, if you go to Britain and you go and get a coffee or order in a restaurant, it's highly likely, extremely likely, especially in the big cities and big towns, that the person serving you will be a non-native speaker. A lot of these catering staff come from Eastern Europe, for example. So what does that mean for the sort of listenings that we give them? And then in Ready for Planet English, new materials like this are going to give you non-native speaker English accents, because we know now that the Queen's English model, for example, it would be nice to speak like that, of course, but that's not what you're going to hear. And that's really vital that we understand that when students are maybe studying in English, and let's remember, for example, students who want to study in English will be doing so, you know, it's a very, very, very important thing they want to do, maybe study, I don't know, medicine or journalism in English. But in the old days, it was like, well, I've got to go to London, I've got to go to Brighton, I've got to go to the USA. They would even be taught by the school systems that you really have to go there to study in English. But of course, colleges and universities around the world are holding on to their students. So whichever country you're watching from now, it's highly likely that many of the top courses now in the higher education system are teaching and lecturing in English, A, because that's what students need to be effective communicators globally, but also B, to keep the students in the country. And there's a huge battle at the moment, leaving aside the issues around the pandemic, to hold on to international students. One of the reasons international students are not coming to the UK anymore is because everybody believes it rains every day. Therefore, that's good. I never really wanted to go to Britain, and apparently the food is terrible. Well, it doesn't rain every day, and the food isn't terrible. I've lived here a long time, I can prove it. But if the students feel like, I don't really want to go to the USA, I want to go to Berlin. You could be, for example, Italian, and you want to live in Berlin, and you want to study journalism in English in Berlin. And that's absolutely the way it's going. So to think that we're equipping students on a cultural basis to learn English to go there is no longer the case. And that has huge implications, and vital ones, for what we're doing with the English we teach them, for perhaps studying in English or here to work. And as you can see, we work in groups virtually more than ever before. And as I said, you know, you could be working globally on a virtual basis with non-native speakers around the world, and that's much more likely. And by the way, if you do speak to a British worker as a virtual worker from your country, I very much doubt they're going to speak really clearly like I'm trying to do, or speak with the Queen's English. So we must prepare students and expose them to the reality. And this is also a little reminder that the great thing about embracing the reality of English as a lingua franca is the no longer discriminating against you guys, the mostly non-native speaker teachers. You know, you see horrendous adverts out there by language schools out there. Please come to our school. We use native speakers only. And it still is quite an effort to train the consumer not to assume that a native speaker is going to be a better teacher. Are you? Well, I've been teaching for 35 years. I'm experienced and I'm qualified. But if I turned up with no experience other than I can speak English, does that make me a better teacher? So there's a debate now, quite a fierce debate, to fight for equality in non-native speakers of English to be teachers, which is kind of crazy, because I was taught by non-native speakers French and German. But that's just how great it is that the world has been accepted as an ELF culture, and English as a lingua franca culture. Chia Swan Chong, a friend and colleague who writes a lot about what it means to teach culture, also talks a lot about what it is to use English as a lingua franca. By the way, I was just showing you a picture there of Peter Medjes. Peter Medjes, the Hungarian author and trainer. If you can watch his video there, that's on the British Council IATEFL website, talks about non-native speaker teachers and their value. And it's kind of obvious what it is, but how does that sit alongside recruitment agencies saying we only want people who speak English as a native speaker? And it's just crazy. And if you read some of the articles and blogs by Chia Swan Chong, for example, she also talks about lingua franca English. And there's also an article she wrote there, if you can find it. I might put it into the links at the end when I send this to you through Ellie. She wrote about how there is training now to get native speaker business people to lower their language level. So not just speaking slowly, not just speaking clearly, because sometimes when you speak very clearly, you exaggerate the accent that you have. therefore making yourself, ironically, less intelligible. For example, if you had a strong Newcastle or Liverpudlian accent, you could be making it harder. So it's really about language awareness, teaching business people more about English to lower their level, because often the non-native speakers are communicating very well, thank you, until the native speaker turns up, because they haven't been really prepared for that. And that's very interesting that in some cases you can teach the advanced students who are non-native speakers to not show off. So if you've got great English as a non-native speaker, is it really benefiting you to look like the best English user in the room if you're alienating your clients because they can't understand you? It's kind of ironic, isn't it? In other words, and you can look at the research out there on what it means to communicate with English on a realistic level. Now, we can't do that always in the classroom. In fact, as I said, we have to work with the criteria of what it is to be examined in your use of English. But I think we have to remember that students are going to use this as a skill after they leave school. There you go. Research shows that non-native speaker users of the language outnumber the native ones by at least 4 to 1, and this number is only going to grow in the coming years. So what we need to do is, this is a quote from Tefl Equity, who do a lot on maintaining the quality of employment and teaching for non-native speakers of English. And just to kind of make you sort of think about it a little bit, just think to yourself, forgive me if I've done this before with teachers who've been on this, on sessions with me before. But think of the last time you had an argument with somebody in your own language. You know, don't forget about teaching, forget about English. Just remember, maybe this morning you had an argument. Maybe it's somebody in the traffic, or a family member, or a friend or a colleague. Just think about it. Or in the past, one massive argument you never forgot. I'm betting that the misunderstanding between you was nothing to do with the correct usage of grammar, or did they use the right vocabulary. In other words, the sort of the things that we mark and teach and test in our grammar and vocabulary lessons, was that really important in the way that the communication played out? And of course, it's not that way at all. Yes, we have to teach English. Yes, we have to teach them what's good, correct and incorrect usage. But again, when we teach students to really communicate effectively around us, isn't it really the way that they use the English? Or rather, not just the idiomatic and lexical strengths that they have, but also how do they really listen and empathize and collaborate and all those soft skills we talk about now. You know, when that argument was taking place, I'm sure the person arguing with you was perfect in their language, their command of your language, but it was the other things they were doing, probably, which were causing the difficulties. They maybe didn't want to hear your point of view. They didn't really go with your values. They simply disagreed. And maybe certain uses of English could mean that you're rude, but miscommunication isn't often down, or certainly not in my arguments in the world. It's never down to the language we use. It's down to how we worked and interacted with that person. And that's why it's so important that when we give students speaking skills and role plays, that we're thinking about those skills that make them good communicators, effective, positive contributors to a meeting or to a conversation. And you see this in surveys. I just thought I'd quote here from a recent survey on LinkedIn, the professional social media platform. The top 3 areas of missing soft skills in candidates are considered to be problem solving, critical thinking, being innovative and creative, dealing with complexities, and also, well, communication is a bit vague. I like this one though. This is also a top 5. And this is what they're looking for when your students are going for a job. And I often say in these situations, look at this. These are the top 5 skills that they want. Where is English in this list? It's not there. And the reason it's not there is because they expect the English to be there. In other words, you can't go for the job unless you really have enough English in the first place. Maybe they've stipulated how well you need to speak English. But even if your grammar is 100% and your vocabulary recall and usage is 100%, does that make you adaptable? Does it mean you're a good collaborator? Are you creative? Are you emotionally intelligent and aware? And can you persuade? So you see what I'm saying, and forgive me if this is something you do. The nature of these webinars means that I just put it out there. But when we look at the content of our course books and the tasks we want the students to do leading to communication, that's all English is. It's communication for whatever purpose, entertainment, studying, traveling, working. And that's where we need to be putting our minds. So we would ask students, this could also be a topic in the classroom, really, not even at the beginning of the course, just from time to time, make English part of the topic. Where do they see English in use? Well, you tell me. What would the students say if you asked the students, where do we see and hear English exactly? What would you say? What would they say to you? Put it in your questions area so I can see if you're still listening. I can sip my tea. Where do they encounter English? I'm still looking to see. Everywhere. Rob, come on. Specifics in every field. Like what? Where exactly do they see English? I want to hear specifics, teachers. Yeah. Ooh. Social media, music videos. Okay. So, you know, I think, and this is the sort of thing I want them to be constantly thinking about, because that's where we can go and find material to add to our course books. In some of the content for Ready for Planet English, it's absolutely a topic to read about, the future of English. Don't read it now, please. It's okay. You'll see this later. And world languages, are they dying? I live in Scotland, and there's often news reports about trying to save the Scots language, not the Scots accent, the Gaelic language, or talking about languages that evolve. And I think it's fascinating as a subject in its own right. The way that languages evolve, the way that they come and go and die. Why is English so popular? And these are topics that we can explore as a topic in itself, and ask the students to consider, you know, constantly what they are going to be using English for. Advertising, just seeing what you've got here. Medicine, yeah. Everyday life, yeah. Well, what's that? I read an article, this is by Anna, where it was written that employers give great importance to correct grammar and spelling, just as they once gave to great communication. That's true too, and I often think about some of the news reports I read from in the UK about native speakers whose grammar and punctuation is not great, and there are all sorts of interesting reasons and theories on that, but I guess you can certainly put in there the lack of regular reading for pleasure, or reading at all. And if you're not reading on a regular basis, you're not possibly acquiring and absorbing the skills to punctuate and spell correctly. Yeah, it certainly doesn't do you any good if you can't use good grammar or spell correctly. But even that's kind of, yeah, I don't know what to do with that. We've got a problem in our own country. Right, so I thought I'd take a topic here, because rather than taking a general topic at the curriculum and then working with the vocabulary, let's see how we can put this into practice by considering, you know, the world at large. And so I'm going to put this to you before, like a demonstration lesson. What do you do with the clothes that you don't wear anymore? Some of your friends' grandkids' written English is atrocious. Yeah, well. You donate the clothes? Yep. Yeah. I'm sorry if I'm not reading all your comments. I can't see them as readily as a chat. I have to click on different ones, but I'm doing my best. Okay. Recycling, you throw them away. Litter, secondhand. Okay. So that would be a good way to start. I'm going to show you a video in a second of a reporter in a country where something is happening with regard to clothes, but this is how I would warm up the video. We would never do that. We might pre-teach some vocabulary, but we don't want to go into this video cold, like jumping into an ice cold swimming pool. We want to warm up the topic, activate the previous knowledge, and maybe think about some more questions For example, what you could do a little discussion with the kids. What do they think about secondhand clothes, and do they wear them, and why not? What about you guys? What do you think about swapping good, giving away the clothes? What do you think about secondhand clothes? Do you wear them? You like secondhand? Yeah, I know some people absolutely. They're always in secondhand shops. It's not just the bargains; it's just the range. You know, sometimes. Yeah, they sound exactly, Christina. I can imagine some people love them because a lot of the secondhand clothes shops have old clothes. Yeah, they have a story. No, yeah, that's good. Clothes have a story. You don't wear them, and that's important, isn't it? Because the group's going to be mixed. Yeah, now it's a problem with maybe we feel that they're not going to be clean. We might get COVID or something. Who knows? Secondhand shops are evolving in Hungary. They're becoming fashionable. That's also true. Fashions come and go. Sometimes over decades, secondhand clothes shops become popular and then less popular. All right, so that's what we would do. Unfortunately, I can't chat to you properly, but the time is coming. That time is coming. So that's warmed us up a little bit, and I would ask students to watch the video now, and maybe you could give them some gist questions like how do they feel about, what are their feelings after watching the video, or maybe we could look at that at the end. But let's just watch the video. It's a couple of minutes, and it's an authentic documentary, or a part of a documentary, where the journalist is in, well, you'll see where.
Adi Adepitan is on an adventure.
Oops, my apologies.
He's travelling to Ghana to find out what happens to all the second-hand clothes people from Europe don't want.
Oh my word, that shirt that you gave away last week, or those trousers, or those unwanted shoes, have ended up here. It's good stuff. This one is Ralph Lauren. Wow. Even though we give away our second-hand clothes for free, some of the world's poorest people pay good money for it. Why don't you buy Ghanaian clothes? Why are you only buying second-hand European clothes?
I don't have money. Money is small. Yes. Complete.
Adi meets some locals who spend their time making changes to the second-hand clothes.
So what's going on here? Excuse me, sir. Could you tell me what you're doing, please? Ironing. You've got to love this place. There's a guy just over there who's turning trousers into skirts. You've got this guy here who's adding dye to jeans, making old second-hand jeans look brand new. You've got this guy who's ironing. You've got a whole mini factory all based around second-hand clothing.
Adi travels to the countryside, where he speaks to an historian about the cultural importance of traditional clothing in Ghana.
There were times that we could not read and write, and so we were keeping our history in the clothes that we wear.
So are traditional prints still as popular? Not just kente, but the traditional clothing.
Second-hand clothing brought in from Europe and America. It's cheaper, far cheaper. If we are not very careful, sometime, somewhere, someday, we would not see some of our own things anymore.
Adi travels to the city to find out what people there think about traditional clothing.
A show of hands, right? If you were going out on a Saturday night, how many of you here would wear traditional clothing on a Saturday night?
Definitely. A couple of years back, it was cool to be only European. Now it's cooler to be African.
Paddy discovers that even if second-hand European clothes are popular, it's much cooler to be African.
Okay, that's great. And before I do any more there, I just thought I'd like to just let that settle. Now that video, I would probably split it into at least half or in 3 parts. But obviously in a webinar, I just want you to see the whole thing and explore how we could use that. So we set up, obviously in the book, well, for those of you who don't know course books, there will be some ideas and a full transcript in the teacher's guide, okay, and lots of ways to use it. And I'm just going to pick some ideas out or ask you, but you might go through the transcript and pre-teach some of the vocabulary there. There was something to do more with Ghana specifically, so there's going to be a need to look some things up there culturally. But isn't this exactly the sort of format that we are familiar with? I mean, I think sooner or later kids see documentaries at home. We've always watched documentaries in our house, not because we're super clever, but because sometimes it's on and you watch something, you learn about wildlife, you're always learning about the world around us on TV. And it's great here because you're exposed to something that's worldly. You can see that Ghana, for example, maybe that would be interesting for teenagers to see. That's in West Africa, where English is used as a second language or sometimes a first language. Very interesting, Ghana, because they use it as an official language, but they have their own Ghanaian languages, which is a throwback from the British Empire. My apologies, everybody, for going in there and putting English, but it's a beautiful English, and the accent, always love the accent in West Africa. Now, like I said, I would split that up a little bit because it's in kind of stages. How would you, I'm not going to let webinars get in the way of this. How would you maybe work with this video, with the language and the topic? Any ideas? Take your time to put it in the chat, because I think this is really important. Because you can just, I mean, you'll see that there's things I can do here, like matching and pair working, and that's great. But what would you do? You know, the book will guide you. That's great. How might you use the video for the language and the topic? Maybe you can't write fast enough. There's quite a few ideas. Anybody want to suggest anything? Yeah, well, when you talk about, so Astrid, talking about culture, one thing I picked up there would be this could lead us into a conversation about traditional clothing. Obviously, at the end, he discusses with them how they feel. Would they go out at night wearing secondhand clothing? And of course, we're talking about demographics. You know, in certain countries, this is all they have. In our country, we're lucky to have a choice, or maybe you know, people like secondhand clothes because they are old, not because they can't afford new clothes. But it is an interesting discussion to have about clothes generally. You know, buying clothes. I think with teenagers, coming back to topics that they love, you know, fashion is one of their top areas of interest. How would they use secondhand clothing, for example, as a pre-watching activity? Yeah, okay. I'd give the students, says Liesel, I'd give the students a list of words and they have to write down what the video said. Yeah, you could, I'm absolutely right. You could do a brainstorming saying to the students, give it away a little bit. You're going to watch a guy, he's going to be in West Africa, and he's going to be visiting an area where they recycle clothes. What kind of verbs, tasks, colors, vocabulary, whatever, could you imagine? Maybe you could split them into groups. And so, you know, those guys think of the verbs, those guys think of nouns, maybe phrasal verbs, tasks, you know, and they can pull it all together once they've seen it. Discuss the business, what's that one by Rob? The business of recycling. Yeah, it would be noisy though. Try shout. Oh, hang on, Gail. Try out shouting mode. Make yourself heard above the hubbub, as well as discerning a voice amongst others speaking at the same time. It'd be noisy. That's true. Well, that's a classroom, isn't it? You could use drama. Wouldn't that mean, Oksana? You could certainly make it a voiceover activity later when you've discussed the topic. What I want from this is we're actually getting the language out of the video clip. I would have played it twice if we had a longer session. you would certainly have a chance to play that a few times, and even, you know, with the right tools, let the students look at it overnight as homework, or even ask them to watch it before they come to the classroom as a flipped learning activity. Maybe give them the language, the transcript to read and watch, so that really all that you're doing is making a discussion out of that lesson, as opposed to really going in cold at the beginning. What else did I get here? I also wanted to point out that we're listening to non-native speakers here. He's got his own British accent, different from mine. We've got Ghanaian users of English, people making mistakes. And I think that makes teachers sometimes quite nervous, but I think it's good that we see people making mistakes. You could even ask the class to see how they might correct that mistake, but they're going to hear people making mistakes in English. That doesn't mean that they should, but maybe it's okay that they see other people make mistakes. And as long as communication wasn't stopped, I think that's quite motivating to know that on the one hand, we should try and get the best marks we can for the exam. I can't change what the exams test, but when they do use English, effective communication is more important than getting your grammar perfect. It's interesting as a discussion. A pro and con essay. Yeah, what could that be about? What would be the pro and con question? How to help the planet. I'm going to come to that now. In fact, I need to move on. Naomi, he had wonderful hair. I'll give you one more look at his hair then. Go on. Yeah. Yeah, you're right. Good hair. In the course book, we can do some of those things you mentioned, or do more controlled tasks here. Again, here's a more formal course book approach to the warming up activity. Now make a list of ways you could deal with the peer pressure on you to buy new clothes. So more cognitive thinking there, and peer pressure at play. The fashion theme continues here. This is a block text, okay? So you might want to break that up with the class. So instead of reading it and doing a comprehension, which you could do, you might give the students, put the students into 4 groups, and they all have A or B or C or D, or they could choose, assuming that somehow all of the topics are covered, and maybe they could go away, read it, and probably look up on the internet more information in their own language, and then come back with a presentation. So this is simple reading, there's probably comprehension, but I took one here and I looked at which one did I look at? B, the Istituto Marangoni, which is my best Italian accent, having worked with Ellie for 2 years. And I simply looked at what they say on the website. Not breaking news to do that, but it's really crucial that students would see, in this case, this whole fashion school lectures and teaches in English. So it's taking that topic a bit further. Now, I was thinking about, somebody said there about looking after the planet. I just thought I was in eco mode today. This is a topic where, again, this is coming from the student's book, but if you know me, like a lot of teachers, don't want to dive into the page straight away because the kids are all looking around, wondering what's next, what's difficult. I would say, look, here's a picture. UK families waste 24 meals every month. Boom, off you go in groups. What food are they wasting? Where are they wasting it? And how are they wasting it? And that gets them discussing the ideas. Now, this is where I say to teachers, and some teachers don't like it, but I don't mind if they're doing that discussion in their own language, especially the ones who don't normally say anything because they feel they don't have good enough English. So if I gave them this task, you know, for 5 minutes, guys, brainstorm why and how and which food is being wasted in let's say the UK, because we're going to read about it. Well, not today, but they will. Then why would we ask them to do it in English only? Because what I want them to do in English is to talk about it once they have the language. If sometimes we ask students questions and the confident students put up their hands, but we don't ask them, we ask the ones who aren't saying anything. And I often have to remind people that maybe they're not saying anything because they simply don't know the language to give you. They want to tell you that they know restaurants waste food, but maybe they don't have the words to describe what they're thinking. And so I would let them use their own language, and then you can put it back into English. You might get more people contributing. And how can we prevent it? So I'd warm this up again instead of just reading the text. There's the text. I mean, if no time to read it, you can read it later. It's a very powerful short text on the waste of food in our country. But I would warm it up by preempting what they're going to read. In fact, I might get them to guess the numbers, or I could take those numbers out of that text. £60 a month on food, 24 meals a month, 4.2 million tons, 22 million. And I would mix up slices and tons and potatoes and liters and see if they could mix the numbers with the different objects. But really what I like students to do is feel that they know the text before they read it. And that's memorable and also less stressful, and also stops the students from feeling that English is going to be difficult. Again, it would be a brainstorming activity on a topic. What could we do to prevent the waste? Well, here I went on the internet and found an infographic, because often these things are really good to find summarized language and numbers that will match our topic. So there you are, for example, a page there from Ready for Planet English. And there I find an infographic that would fit that topic, okay, which is in the text here. What did I do next? I did something else here. Yeah, we can ask them to create a poster or an infographic. You can get tools and apps now for them to create their own infographic. Maybe they could do a presentation. It could be on their own country. They could be comparing countries, food waste, okay? In other words, the language is there. What can they do with it? What do we do in our country? Maybe they don't care about the UK. What about our country? What about the worst country in the world? Who wastes the most food? Now you've got comparatives and superlatives. So we're not sticking to one grammar area. We can start to recycle grammar if you want to keep it on a grammar focus. You can make it a TV interview. You know, you could pretend, well, if they do some research on the internet in their own language, they can come back and prepare a role play where somebody is being accused at the restaurant of wasting food, and the journalist is attacking them and saying there must be other ways, and they explore how they could maybe save from all the waste. There you go. Or a report, examine some reports, or even they could monitor their own food waste at home and blog about it, not necessarily in the public domain, but maybe internally. All right, I'm aware that I'm talking, but I don't want to slow you down with too much feedback, because I want to give you ideas. This made me think about the 21st century. I mean, they keep saying, of course, most of the jobs your students will do probably haven't been invented yet. But again, we could read here about a text on jobs we love. I'm going to hide it again, sorry. But if you just say, how cool is your job? It's good at this older level of the teenagers to think about the topics and work they want to do. Again, it brings me back to where I first started, about the reality. In a recent survey, this is in the US, 60% of teens want to launch their own businesses instead of working regular jobs. The gig economy, working gigs. And it's true, look down the bottom. Today's teens are thinking differently about their future employment, and many have decided they don't want to work for anyone else. It's probably because they've been watching us suffer for so long. About 60% of teenagers, this is in the States, are more interested in someday starting their own business instead of working a traditional job. And the rest is detail, and the link will come to you later. Now, if that's the case, and they're going to want to do their own business, well, maybe they'll stay in their own country, but we can't be certain that they're just going to do this sort of work in their own country and not ever need English. So what does that mean for negotiating and buying and listening and selling and presenting in English? And as you work through your syllabus of language, teaching grammar and vocabulary and idioms, in the skills practice, we need to get the students thinking about what that could mean. I mean, that would be a great project, or maybe they've got to pitch for a product they want to sell. Maybe you're doing that already. In other words, using English meaningfully and purposefully in the world of work. 2 out of 5 teens surveyed said their inspiration for entrepreneurship mostly comes from social media influencers and celebrities, of course. The survey also found that 45% of teens want to learn time management. That's me. They want to learn the ropes. Great expression, by the way. Let's learn the ropes from current business owners, and 37% would be interested in programs after school teaching entrepreneurship. Entrepreneurship, I mean, think of all the things you need to be able to do with your communication skills, and you can't assume they're going to stay in their country. What does that mean for the way they use English? I thought I'd finish off by thinking about some of the cool jobs. This is also in the book. I was just flicking through some of the pages and found some pictures you could show to the students about jobs for the future or interesting, cool jobs, which they would read about later. I might show you that text before I go. Show these pictures, so don't make them read the text and match the pictures. That's what the book tells you to do. You can do that later, but that feels like it's a classroom activity, and there's a place for that. We need to do that. That's kind of comprehension based work. Warm them up. Which one would you like to do? What is the job? Okay, what do you think their jobs are? Let's try a little bit. I've got 10 minutes before we go. If you love your job, you'll never work a day in your life. That's very true. Who said that? You did. That's very true. If you love your job, you'll never work a day in your life. What jobs can you see here? They're not necessarily what you think. What about the guy watching telly? The guy watching television, what's he doing? What's his job? Is he testing sofas? What would the students think? Mark Twain, yeah, that's probably. Eco-policeman, I like that. Travel blogger, so now we're opening up the world of jobs. And I think that, I have to say, I mean, say what you like about the world we're living in, but it is exciting if you're a teenager and you want to do anything. You can't tell them they can be anything they want, really. I mean, a lot of things do take hard work and commitment, even the famous influencer jobs. But at least there's a fair chance of doing more than just getting the local job and down the road. Do you remember, and the democratization of entrepreneurship. You hear these young teenagers in India who've created some program and now they're making money. If that's what we think success is, you can now do this. And of course, these are the jobs we want to talk about and the skills you need to do them. Video games researcher. Well, if you want to quickly skim and scan, I can give you the answers if you feel that. And then think about which one you'd like. Have a look. Okay, I won't waste your time asking you to read that. Here's another idea. When I look at the student's book, okay, rather generously, I didn't show you the whole the student's book, but the page has the text, the pictures, and comprehension questions. That's great. It could be for homework. You might want them to do a little bit of work quietly with the book like this, but I want them communicating with me in the classroom and thinking about it all the time. So I might, for example, what I could do here is just take those titles: Disney Imagineer, Private Island Caretaker, Professional Netflix Watcher, and so on. And in the book, you can use that as a way of matching titles to those pictures. I just hid them slightly. Then they could work out in groups what those jobs involve. What kinds of tasks can they imagine? In other words, again, and as you go around the groups, listen to them speaking in their local language, maybe some English, maybe not. If you say English only in my classroom, well, there's a chance many of them won't communicate with you because they don't have the English. So let's hear what they have to say. I don't know the English, but I think a Netflix watcher, he has to decide the kinds of programs, blah, blah. Yeah, okay, so how could we do? And you go around the class, and I think that's really valuable because when they start to read it, they already have the sense of what's in the text. And now we can do more about what those jobs could be like. By the way, you might revisit routines at this point. So you're not teaching routines, but you could go back to what would be a typical day in the life. This is what I was coming to here. A day in the life. You could find them on YouTube. You could read articles, whatever you want to do. And here, for example, you could find very short videos or text about what it's like to be a music producer or a fitness influencer. I think those days are gone. I think that ship has sailed for me to be a fitness influencer. But I think it's also good to know, well, if they do have fantasies about doing these jobs, what does it take to succeed? And maybe perfect English isn't enough. And these are the things we want them to see, talk about, and explore and practice as they go forwards. So that's a short way of looking at some of the content we can take from a course book like this new course from Ready for Planet English. This is a sort of A1 to B2. Okay, and then as we looked at the topics now, we're looking at the world around us. This is very much mixed Englishes, international use of English, topic-wise, language-wise, and of course preparing them for the world of work. Very, very strong on the sort of skills and attitudes and 21st century skills that they need to be thinking about as they head towards the exams. And then the real reason for using English. They think English is just for school and for the exams, and it's our job to keep reminding them that it's not like that. So you'll see the links later. More information about the course and sample pages are online at ellieonline.com. And when you get the book, student's book, or the workbook, they have a code inside the print book, and both the student's book and the workbook are available to you on the digital platform. And you know, there's a lot of interactive activities you can use offline as a remote teacher or in the classroom as well, including playing the audio and the videos there. So the video that you saw earlier, you would see that on the digital book. You could click on that and then you could do some of the exercises from there, or use that as a springboard into the discussion. Astrid says, I would love to be a Disney Imagineer. Well, you still can. Why not? Who says you can't? All right, you can't see. Sorry, Christina, you didn't see it. Well, maybe you'll see the video when I send it later with the links. Okay, well, just to say thank you to all of you. I'll take any questions if you want to put them in the chat, any thoughts, comments or questions, feedback, okay? But I believe you do get a certificate of attendance, and don't forget to check out more videos from me and my colleagues and other trainers at the LE Multimedia channel on the YouTube platform. As you know, we can't get enough information or help out there. Oops. And LE Multimedia YouTube channel is where you can go to see more information about courses and how to use them. Because what I love to do is take course books like these and think, how can we make this real? How can we keep connecting it? It's beautifully designed. It's got lots of all the things we need, but it's very much a roadmap, isn't it? It's like a menu of things. Then we're going to look up and see, right, how does this English work for us in the real world? And I think it's a hard job to teach English, but I think we have to make the effort every lesson, because you never know which lesson is going to really make that difference and the connection can be made, because all the students are developing in different ways at different times, and some things speak to others in different ways. Okay, so I'm just going to, if Sylvia isn't listening and watching, you can pick out anything I've missed. How can this series of books relate to teaching the 21st century skills? Well, this series of books is all designed around the topics that are not just of interest to teenagers, but how they are going to interact in a world that is changing around them. So it could be the digital world, it could be a diverse cultural world. What does it mean to be in Britain, really? And when these books relate to 21st century skills, as I said earlier, if you think about that part when I was saying, you know, you have an argument with somebody, a misunderstanding, the lack of communication is very, very seldom to do with the language they're using, and really the point of view they take, the stance they take with you. Are they really listening? Are they showing positive human behavior to use the language then effectively? But the book is a platform for all sorts of topics to come out and all sorts of soft skills. Maybe the students in one unit will be persuading. Maybe in another unit they'll be examining different cultures. For example, there you were looking at clothes in a different environment completely. So take a look at the Ready for Planet English, because it's all about the topics and the skills they need to navigate this sort of very diverse, fast-moving, fast-changing world with a lingua franca of English. You're all being very grateful, and thank yous to you. Thank you. No, thank you. Any more questions? I would love to help anybody with questions. Safari tour guide, Astrid, gamer, you want to change and do everything. Sylvia, did you see any questions there for me?
Yes, thank you, by the way, Andy. Yes, I can see a couple of questions. I just wanted to remind to all our teachers to, you know, if they want to find out more about this new course book for upper secondary, you can visit our website and to the direct link, which is ellieonline.com/0 ready for Planet English. So you will find more information. And this is a course book for upper secondary students. So should I read, the couple of questions for you? So, okay. It looks like we are back in the classroom now. Do I still need the digital books or the digital components? Well, I would say yes. Anyway.
Yeah, I would say yes, because, well, I suppose many people out there are doing hybrid lessons. Sometimes they're working at home. Some of the groups, it's hard to know. In some countries, everyone's back at school. Sometimes they're still splitting it. But even if we go back to, no remote teaching, I think students need to know that they're using the books digitally. That is also how they'll often do their homework. And many people are using integrated platforms, and they want to interact with the books more than ever before. I think that the lesson we learned from the pandemic has been that they weren't really digital natives regarding education. They were digital natives about entertainment and being entertained online. So it's good practice for them to be working digitally in the classroom as well. And there's more opportunities for wider interactions like polls and working with their own devices. So absolutely, they can be working. And I think we've learned so much in the last couple of years. It would be a bit of a waste not to do that.
Yes, thank you. And okay, is it okay to do grammar work on these topics linked to 21st century skills or life skills, or how we like to call them?
So yeah, is it okay to? Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's quite good too, because sometimes you might use a topic to do discussion work or vocabulary, but you can see perhaps in that video or with that videos, I think you could actually go back and exploit it just for maybe some revision. Maybe it didn't strike you that it was a grammar lesson, but then you might see some material and think, hey, I could reuse that to recycle, because one thing we need in course books is to continually revise. So if you've used something for a skills lesson, but you realize actually that would be a good lesson for the present perfect, I would completely adapt it. And again, use the student's book very loosely if you want to. It's just there to be used in any way you want. Yeah, totally. And I think some teachers want to focus more on grammar, and there's nothing wrong with that.
Thank you. I just wanted to remind, because there's a teacher asking if there's an app coming with this course book, and yes, the answer is yes. So there's an app for students, so students can access the audio, the multimedia files, actually audio and videos files, directly from the printed book through their smartphone, and then they will be alongside the digital books with all the digital material, digital exercises, etc., etc.
I noticed Naomi there at the end is saying that they often use student smartphones for various purposes. I think that's great to hear. And I know that so many schools, including in the UK, in case anybody thinks that we think we've got the best idea, we don't. We're still learning. I think the time has to come sooner or later when smartphones are used in the classroom, absolutely, for all sorts of reasons, communications, surveys, polls, looking things up. I mean, if that's what we're doing in the real world, why would we ask them not to do it in the classroom? Surely a more effective use of smartphones is another way that we can prepare students for the 21st century. What a crazy thing to do, to say you're out in the 21st century, but in the classroom, we're going to go back to the 20th century. That doesn't make sense to me. And I know that that's not easy. It's got to be policed, and you can't assume that you give them a task on a smartphone and when you're not looking, they're going to go on Facebook. But I think that's just like, it's like the early days of cinema, when they used to think that, people weren't going to accept people talking. I think this is just going to change, using smartphones, and there's loads of great resources out there, and I hope the schools do that more and more.
Thank you, Andy.
Yeah,
I think we.
So much to say. Yeah, so much on this topic. It's a great topic.
Yeah,
Anybody
I think yeah, I mean, okay, let's wait for another few seconds. It's just that, time is.
Yeah. Well, I mean, my email, I'm gonna when you get the slides, I think Sylvia will send out the slides and the links. My email is there.
Yeah, just remember to download the PDF for this presentation just right now before I end the session, and you will find all contacts, you know, Ellie contacts and Andy's contacts and all the slides, you know, from your presentation in a PDF format.
It's in the where is the PDF?
Documents, in the documents. There's a documents document box.
Yeah. So if you want to download it now, it's called Life and Language in the 21st Century _ Cowle. In the handouts or documents, do that now. And if you forget or you don't have time now, I'm sure you can contact Ellie and get it. And if you've got anything there you want to ask me, email me. It's okay. I will reply.
So thank you. And just, you know, remember to register and follow up also other webinars with Ellie next week about language certifications, and the week after about virtual and blended learning. By the way, we're talking about that now. So you know, all the information is on ellionline.com/webinar. So thank you very much, Andy, for your, you know, precious and very informative talk, and thanks to all the teachers.
Thanks everybody. Thanks friends. Keep in touch. Stay safe.
Bye everyone. Bye.
Bye everyone.